the theologians called God, and my Zulus called Mkulu, the first spirit, where the first spirit had passed over some of his power and some of his responsibilities to the human being, and that the human being had a God-like task to perform in creation, and the extent to which he performed it, he derived his meaning. It's a very important part of Jung's thinking.
Oh, well, I just paid a visit to him in Vienna, and then we talked for 13 hours without interruption.
13 hours without interruption.
13 hours without interruption. We didn't realize that we were almost dead at the end of it, but it was tremendously interesting. He was the old man and had a great experience, and he was way ahead of me, and so I settled down to learn something first.
I had written that book that cost me my friendship with Freud because he couldn't accept it.
Yes.
To him, the unconscious was a product of consciousness.
Yes.
And it simply contained the remnants. I mean, it was sort of storeroom where all the discarded things of consciousness were heaped up and left. But to me, the unconscious then was already a matrix, a sort of basis of consciousness of a creative nature, namely capable of autonomous acts, autonomous intrusions into consciousness.
Man's soul is a complicated thing, and it takes sometimes half a lifetime to get somewhere. in one's psychological development. You know, it is by no means always matter of psychotherapy or treatment of neuroses. It is all psychology has also the aspect of a pedagogical method in the widest sense of the word. It is something.
Education.
It is an education. It is something like antique philosophy, and not what we understand by a technique. It is something that touches upon the whole of man, and which challenges also the whole of man in the patient or whatever the receiving part is, as well as in the doctor.
One of the tremendous things which Jung did was to always emphasize the aspect of man's totality. And our totality is not complete unless we take our human failings into it. It doesn't mean that I necessarily have always to live my human failings. I obviously may have to take responsibility for them. But they are not only part of me, but they are part of every human being. That is to say, it is part of man.
Consciousness is one factor, and there is another factor, equally important, that is the unconscious, that can interfere with consciousness any time it pleases. And of course, I say to myself now, this is very uncomfortable, because I think I am the only master in my house, but I must admit that there is another somebody in that house that can play tricks. And I had to deal with the unfortunate victims of that interference every day in my patients.
Analysis, proper, and particularly Jungian analysis, begins and ends with conscience. That is, that you take responsibility, that you take into consideration all those manifestations which so far have remained in the unconscious. In other words, you are not conscious of. And if you start taking the responsibility for those manifestations, like shadow qualities and whatnot, then this is a very strong test for your conscience, isn't it? And so, I mean, you only have to think of the beginning of psychoanalysis. I mean, it took an enormous amount of moral courage to face these facts, which so far have not been considered or repressed.
I felt that Jung should tell me what I should do, whether I should write a book, whether I should get a divorce, what I should do. And he wouldn't. And so I got mad at him. And I said, why is everybody so mean to me? And he said, why are you so mean to everybody? So I stormed out. And you got what I said there. I said to him, why is everybody so mean to me? And he said, why are you so mean to everybody? That was the trigger point. I was gone for a year. And I wrote him, oh, I don't know. Every now and then I'd sit down at the typewriter and write him what a son of a bitch I thought he was. How when I first got to Europe, everyone thought he was a charlatan. I thought he was too. And I didn't, he was the most conceited, vain man. And I really had a great time. And
you sent all these letters?
Sent the letters, of course I did. And I thought, I hope he drops dead of a stroke. And I felt very good. I just felt fine. When I can get mad, I can lose 5 pounds just by getting mad. It's just the adrenaline goes, and I just think, it's the opposite of poor little me. And I don't care. Let the world go and stuff it up. I don't care what happens to it. And then one morning I woke up, and I began to laugh. I thought, for God's sake, what's been going on here?